Hey homies, what up? It's Ohio Skater, Zach. I haven't made a video in a while, but promise you I'm gonna get back on it and I'm gonna make more videos soon. Gonna get the channel back up and running and gonna have more content for you all. But I thought I would start that today. Start doing that today with a video. And it's Thanksgiving, so happy Thanksgiving, everyone. I hope you all enjoy it and spend time with your family and have good meals and just have an all-around good time. That's what Thanksgiving's about, celebrating family and everything, and the United States of America, our country and stuff, whether you like it or not. I mean, I have criticisms of America, obviously, but I'm not above celebrating with my family. So anyway, so I'm probably going to talk about a few things in this video. I don't know how long this video will be, but I got a lot of things I want to talk about, so I thought I'd make it one whole video, so you guys have something, so you guys have some variety. So the first thing I want to talk about is a conversation, more like conversations, a few conversations that I've had on this Discord server. It's a far left Discord server, and I'm not going to mention the name of the server, but I'll just tell you about this. So it's filled with like communists and Marxists and stuff like that. Now, I am a market socialist. I'm a mutualist, a market anarchist actually, and I don't consider myself a communist, but I do consider myself a socialist and a libertarian socialist and a market socialist. And a lot of these more communist types and these more Marxist types have a lot to say about it. And I try to just go and chill, like have a chill conversation, but they always got to say something. They always got to bring something up, why I'm wrong or why I'm a fake socialist. I don't bring these conversations up. They start them, and out of nowhere, I'm just chilling like, hey, how's your day? Like, and they'll just respond with something like that. It's really annoying. I'm not going to leave the server yet. I don't know if I will or not. Might see if things cool down after they get to know me more. But basically, this conversation I was having the other day, all I said was, so what I said was that I'm an anarchist because I believe that liberty and equality are not mutually exclusive. And I said, like liberalism, capitalism, whatever, has liberty, but it does not have equality. Whereas Marxism or whatever, has equality, but it does not have liberty. Now, anarchism is the ideology that has both liberty and equality, and that's why I believe in it. And that's a way I like to phrase it sometimes, is why I believe in anarchism. And but this guy got on me and said like, oh, you're an idealist or whatever, and if you don't know about Marxism, they have this thing where it's like materialism versus idealism. Idealism is like ideas. Idealists believe that society runs on ideas, whereas materialists, who are Marxists, or mostly Marxists, believe that what matters most is like material conditions. So like the actual concrete things in our life, like the economy and stuff like that, that is what runs society. So I would say I do actually lean more towards materialism, honestly, but this guy called me an idealist simply because I said I believe in liberty and equality, because those are two ideals or whatever. So that makes me an idealist just because I said that. But I think, it's a socialist server, right? So they should have given me some credit. They should have understood that obviously that's what's behind my idea of liberty and equality, my ideas of liberty and equality. Like, I'm talking about material conditions that allow for more liberty and equality. I'm not just talking about randomly liberty and equality in vacuums, in a vacuum, you know what I'm saying? I'm talking about like creating, I believe anarchism creates material conditions which provide us with more liberty and equality. And that really annoyed me. That's my biggest pet peeve when it comes to political discussions, is when people don't give you any credit. People don't assume you know what you're talking about, and they'll just flat out try to tell you what you are when you know what you are, But yeah, so I think, if you're going to be a socialist, you got to believe in it for reasons. Why would you be a socialist, if you didn't believe in at least equality on some level, I mean, they just talked about like material conditions, like, oh, material conditions are what are important for society, and ideals, you shouldn't think about them. But the thing is, whether they're really like ideals or not is a whole different discussion. But like communists, Marxists, believe in materialism, right? Like I said, they believe in material conditions, in studying material conditions and changing material conditions, but they believe in that. They believe in creating material conditions which allow for more equality. That's the whole point, And if you just talk about like, oh, I like material conditions are what matter. Okay, like, well, what do you want to do with material conditions, and why do you want to do that? You want to change material conditions so that things are more equal, which allow for equality. The point is, which we would both agree on, me and a Marxist, is that you can't just try to create more liberty and equality without changing the structure of the economy. Who owns what? The proletariat and the bourgeoisie and stuff like that. You can't create more equality by not changing the economic system and who owns what. And I agree with that. But why would you not believe in equality? Why would you just say like, oh, I only care about material conditions? Well, what do you want to do with the material conditions, and why? Like what's the purpose of you changing the material conditions? And the real purpose is, which I think any common sense socialist would say, is to create more equality. Create material conditions which allow for more equality. And they didn't understand that that's obviously what I meant, and because we're in a socialist service, so you should just assume that that's what I mean. Like, I'm not an idiot, like I'm there because I'm a socialist, and I'm a socialist because I believe that. And I think there are things in conversations work better if you assume that someone else knows what they are talking about. Like, what they are saying, you should assume that they understand what they are saying and why they are saying it, not just like saying random things, But I think some Marxists do lack social skills because they don't consider that when they talk to people, They don't think other people are intelligent, and they also think that. And this guy told me, like, go read Capital Volume 1 or whatever. And I have read most of Capital Volume 1. I listened to it on audiobook, most of it, and then I read most of it, and I've read, like, different parts of it. But I also read a lot of it starting from the beginning. I didn't finish it in either case, but I know a lot of what it says. And I said I have read Capital Volume 1, And they're like, oh, read it again. But, like, where was I going with that? So, But yeah, they think that you reading Marx will automatically make you a Marxist. Why wouldn't it? Like every time they tell you like, oh, just read Marx, dude. Like, and it's like, okay, well, I have read Marx, but that doesn't mean I decided to be a Marxist. You can read something and not be what it advocates. You can read something and be critical of it and not align with it, Like, I've read Marx because it's socialist and I'm a socialist, but I didn't end up being a Marxist. But they would assume that, like, oh, anyone who reads Marx would just automatically become a Marxist because it's so genius, Like, it's not, dude. It's normal socialist theory, and there's many other socialist theorists. And to idolize and have a cult of personality about one single socialist theorist when there's hundreds of them, and you could... that to me is just irrational, like to only read Marx and read no other socialist theory and call all other socialist theory bogus. That is so irrational to me, and it's really annoying, like, or Lenin or whatever too. But I don't know, it just makes me think that they're just followers, and it's a hive mind, and they just want to be followers, and they don't, because a lot of them were berating me with this type of stuff, a lot of them in this server, and I don't know, but yeah, I think, first of all, I believe in liberty. I believe in anarchism because I believe in liberty and equality, and I believe in anarchism because I think anarchism creates the material conditions which allow for more liberty and equality. And I think also, if you're talking to me and I tell you I'm a socialist anarchist and I say that, you should automatically assume that that's what I meant, because I read theory, I know what I'm talking about, like I didn't become an anarchist yesterday because I saw a meme or something, like, I don't know, really annoying. But, yeah, I'm going to move on to the next topic. So, speaking of Marxism, I have been watching the show The Americans lately. The Americans, if you haven't heard of it, it's about spies from the Soviet Union, 2 Soviet spies who are husband and wife, and they come to America and they spy on the American government, and they send information back to the Soviet Union. And they have trained themselves to speak with American accents, so they blend in with everyone else, and no one think they pretend that they're travel agents, and I think they really are actually travel agents, but it's a hoax. They're pretending really because they really are spies. But one of my favorite parts about the show is how they compare with how they compare the Soviet Union with America. Now, they know that America is a more advanced country, but I think they think that it is this way because Russia had worse material conditions which were out of the people's control, and it has nothing to do with Marxism, and Marxism is going to fix it. That's what they think. Because the Soviet Union, that wasn't too long ago in history, and it didn't last very long. So this would have been like less than 100 years. It didn't even last 100 years. So this would have been like less than 100 years of the Soviet Union. So they think that the United States is more advanced, but I think they also think that Marxism is what will make Russia better than America eventually. Like eventually, not right away, And in one of the scenes, like, I won't get too into it because I don't want to spoil it. But one of the characters, one of their kids. All right, so whatever, spoiler alert. But one of their kids, it's been out forever. So if you haven't seen it, I'm sorry. But spoiler alert, one of their kids finds out that they are spies. The other one doesn't know, but one of their kids, at least where I am in the show, one of their kids finds out they're spies, and she's in one of the scenes. The kid is reading like Marxist theory. The kid is reading Marxist theory, and her mom, the spy, comes into the room and says, and like comments on like, oh wow, you're reading that, and the girl's like, have you ever read it? And she was like, yeah. The mom is like, yeah, I read it growing up, and the kid asks like, is everyone equal there? Because the kid's always lived in America. The kid is like 100% American basically, until that's what she assumed until she finds out her parents are spies. And she's like, was everyone equal there? And she was like, the mom was like, we have our problems, but everyone was in it together. Everyone was in it together. And that struck me. That sense of togetherness, that everyone was in it together, is interesting. The way the mom would say that is one thing that's better about the Soviet Union than what is in America. Because in America, it's all individualism, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, I found that really cool to hear. Like, everyone. She said, we have our problems, but everyone was in it together. And yeah, so I thought that was a very interesting comment. Yeah, and so the kid is a really progressive kid. She's part of a church, a really liberal church, and she does activism through her church, and her parents are obviously atheists, so they were a little concerned about her going to church, and I found that to be a very good part of the show. That because usually I like when they flip flop things around, like how like usually the trope is that the kids are more progressive than the parents on most things. Every generation becomes more progressive, and therefore the parents are usually more conservative. But in this show, her parents are atheists, and she starts going to a church. I mean, it's a liberal church, but still, like, she starts believing in Christianity and going to a church, and she gets baptized. And that reminds me of a show called Family Ties from the 80s. Alex Keaton is like this really Reaganite conservative kid, and his parents are like these crazy hippies, from the 60s, and I find that a really interesting reversal of the trope when the kid is more conservative than the parents. I find it interesting for sure. But yeah, so The Americans is a really good show. I bought some Blu-rays of it, that's how I've been watching it. Yeah, and what else can I say about The Americans? Yeah, so more about how they compare, like, the Soviet Union with America, They basically think Americans are spoiled and never face any hardships. And they talk about how shitty their childhoods were in the Soviet Union when they didn't have enough food. They didn't have enough food to go around and stuff like that. But they basically think that makes them tougher and more. And they wear it as a badge of honor. And like I said, they think the Soviet system will fix all of that. They think it was like that because Russia was so fucked up even before it became socialist, and the Soviet Union is trying to fix it, and that's what they believe the future of the Soviet Union will be like because of Marxism. So they think it's a process, basically, but they have all these comments about how Americans are spoiled and never faced any hardship or anything, and I would say that's true. Americans have very good lives on average compared to people in other countries. So I would say that's true, for sure. Anyway, next topic is, I've been reading some stuff lately. So I've been reading about postmodernism. I got a book on postmodernism. Here, I'll show you these books real quick. I'll go grab them. Got the books. They were on my bed because I've been reading them. So I've been reading this book, The Truth About the Truth. It's a bunch of postmodernist essays, deconfusing and reconstructing the postmodern world. So, talked about postmodernism, right? What is postmodernism? Basically, postmodernism is about how everything has become subjective, and there's no objective truth anymore, and everything is now subjective. And I find that very interesting. I think, that I think that's true for a lot of things. I think that's true for politics. I think that's true for any sort of social science. But then I've been reading, don't hate. I know what you're going to say. You're a socialist, why are you reading this? But I'm a libertarian socialist, and I'm an individualist anarchist. I'm a mutualist. So this kind of is adjacent to what I believe in, but Ayn Rand, Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology. So epistemology is basically about, like, knowledge. Like, what is knowledge? How do we get knowledge? What is knowledge? And Ayn Rand had her own philosophy called objectivism. Objectivism, I think, is becoming more popular amongst right-wing anarchist types. Again, I've seen a revival happening on the internet for sure. And objectivist. So what is that about? Objectivity. She claims that things are objective. So these two books I've been reading at the same time, and it's sort of like a debate going on in my head with objectivism versus postmodernism. So I think what I would say is that objectivity and subjectivity both exist in different degrees in different areas, and I think it is objective that some things are subjective. So it's combined the two. Like, if things weren't subjective, people wouldn't have different opinions. It would just be impossible. We would all think exactly the same. But so many things like opinions, your political opinions, are subjective points of view. But it is objective that those things are subjective. It's a fact that people have different opinions, So yeah, I think Ayn Rand says that in one of her books. But basically, with postmodernism, a lot of people in the postmodernist movement are like architects, and it's about like building style or art style, art style, and stuff like that. But it's okay. So it's seen by a lot of people as progressive, but I think it's sort of like a Western progressive thing, like sort of progressive as in the way that Westerners would be progressive, because true progressivism is like socialism, And with Marxism, I think Marxism does lean more toward objective truth with like material conditions and stuff like that, and like I've been saying. But postmodernism is more liberal, I would say. And liberalism has to do with individuality, and individuality has to do with subjectivity, what makes different individuals unique, you know what I'm saying? But obviously Ayn Rand was a capitalist. She was a minarchist. All libertarian capitalists are into her. So Ayn Rand basically breaks it down and talks about, like, tries to prove that things are objective, and she talks about like how we form concepts and how we form categories of concepts, and how we abstract about things, and basically how we make sense of things by creating categories, putting different concepts into categories, and stuff like that. And so she's saying that the way we use language is basically has objective rules to it, which is true. If language didn't have objective rules, no one would be able to understand each other. We'd all be speaking our own individual language, and no one. It'd be very hard to understand each other. But postmodernism talks specifically about language as well, and about how it talks a lot about signs, like things are signs of things. And one thing is like, it talks about like idolatry, like worshiping idols, which a lot of Christianity is against, other religions too. Like a lot of churches won't have like art or anything. Like Catholic churches do have like a lot of art. They're beautiful artwork, stained glass windows and stuff like that. But a lot of Protestant churches won't have any artwork because it's idolatry. It's worshiping idols, But they were talking about idolatry in this, and it talks about how no longer is a sign of something else, but rather that sign is just the sign of what it is. It is the truth of what it is, So signs don't represent truth as much as they are truth themselves now, and this works because everyone has different truths, everyone has different perspectives. Let me look at some of what these essays are called so I can remember. But yeah, pluralism, the idea of culture, the idea of ethnicity. Pluralism is very important for a liberal system. Pluralism is when you have plural, different belief systems coexisting, and even different institutions, and stuff like that. And it talks about one thing that I truly do agree with is that ethnicity is a social construct, that race and ethnicity are not really real. Humans have invented it. It's a social construct that we've invented. But Ayn Rand would say that social constructs are objective because it is a thing that we have created. So it is the way the world works. Even if it's created by humans, a social construct, that doesn't mean it's not objective. That doesn't mean it's not a fact, because it's a fact that it is a social construct. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of different ways you could attack this. I mean, Ayn Rand talks about like consciousness. She's talking about like individuals' consciousness, in concept formation and cognition and measurement. Measurements are objective, and measurements allow us to make sense of, to differentiate between different concepts and different objective things that we see, which are in different categories, So yeah, it's all very interesting. I think it's a fun debate that I'm having in my own head. Postmodernism versus objectivism. It's very entertaining to me to pit these two ideas against each other. And I know some people in this church I went to that are really against postmodernism. They say that they don't really say the word postmodern, but they'll say like, oh, nowadays like everyone thinks they have their own truth. But they'll say like the only truth is God in the Bible, But I think if that were true, then everyone would be Christian. That's what it would be like, And Ayn Rand was actually an atheist. So even though she's an objectivist, she would disagree that God and religion is the truth, but she still argued for objective reality. But a lot of Christians these days are arguing against subjectivism and postmodernism and claiming that the objective reality is what's in the Bible and stuff like that. I would disagree with that. Another thing I could talk about, I'll move on to the next subject now. Another thing I can talk about is I'm narrowing in on what my religious beliefs really are. So I made a couple different videos about religion recently with my friend Michael, Mighty Elf, who I met on Discord. He's a cool guy. I'm going to try to have some other videos talking to some other people who are in that same friend group, introduce you to some more of my friends. There was the discussions with Phil, and then there was the longer discussions with Michael, and I'm going to try to include some more other people, But, so I think really I'm a deist and I'm a Taoist. So I've talked about Taoism a bit already. Taoism is the idea of the Tao, which translates to the way. And it's not really about, the Tao is not a god. The Tao is basically the nature of things, the way things are and the way things work in the universe, And deism is about a God, and deism says that God doesn't really interfere with our lives, and that the supernatural parts of religion are completely false. They don't believe in miracles. They don't believe in the Bible being literal. You can be a deist and a Christian. Many of the founding fathers were. But an example of a founding father who was deist would be Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Jeffersonian Bible, the Jefferson Bible or whatever, which is the New Testament with all the supernatural parts taken out of it. He literally went through his Bible and cut parts out of which things were aligned with reality and took out and then pasted them into his own Bible, which was Jesus's life as a normal person, as a normal human being. So I found that really interesting. And so deism claims that, with the way I see it, is that there's a God, right? I do believe there's a God, and I do believe there's an afterlife. But I believe that God doesn't directly interfere with our lives. I think he just created the laws of science and the nature of the universe and created us, or created the process that would have led to us, and just watched it all play out. We could just be a science experiment. You know what I'm saying? Like, that idea is very interesting to me. I think all he really needed to do was create the laws of science, which govern the way we act, the way we can possibly act. You can't do anything that are against the laws of science. You just can't. It's a fact, So So yeah, they're really heavy on like rationality. It's a very rational religion. So I think I believe in that, and I believe in the Tao. The Tao maybe being those laws which govern the scientific laws. No one knows. The Tao can't be described, but I have my ideas. But yeah, so I've sort of combined it, deism and Taoism, and that is the unique religion that I believe in. That's my truth, I guess. That's what I think is the most likely. Yeah, if I was going to go to a church, I'd go back to the Unitarian Universalist church. Unitarian Universalist. I would say I'm a Universalist. Universalists see commonalities in all the world's religions. They like to focus on what religions share with each other, the ideas and the concepts that the different religions share with each other. They like to dive into that. And the Unitarian Universalist church is pretty much like that. They talk about all sorts of different religions. It started off as sort of like a Christian or a Jewish, both Christian and Jewish concepts, but it's expanded to talk about every single religion. You could go there and they could be talking about Buddhism or Hinduism, they could be talking about anything on any given in any given service. So yeah. So that's what I would say that I believe in. Anyway, this video has been a little over 30 minutes, so I'll end it here and I'll post it right away. And yeah, tell me what you think. Please comment, and I'll get back to the content again. I'll get back on it and start making videos regularly again, I promise. So anyway, peace.